Hello, everyone. This is your host, Debra Poneman, and I'd like to welcome you to our call with today's guest, Brent Phillips. Brent was an MIT-trained engineer who was disabled for 7 years until he experienced a miracle when his injured arm instantly healed from a single session of energy healing. Today, he is widely considered a master healer, is a published author, and is the creator of the Formula for Miracles energy healing system and the patent-pending Formula for Miracles audio technology. And today you're going to discover how spiritual awakening can lead to the beginning of the end of suffering. Also, the 3 stages of a spiritual journey, the great lie responsible for most of the suffering in the world, and an amazing shortcut that leads to spiritual liberation. Wow. Brent, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to the call.
Thanks, Debra. I'm really glad to be here.
Well, I am so glad you're here, and I would really appreciate it if you could just take a couple minutes and share what you believe to be the major turning points in your life that allowed you to manifest this amazing knowledge and also your current level of success.
Sure. It's an interesting story. I'll try to keep it real short so we can get to the good stuff. But I think it is useful to start so all the listeners can know at least just a little bit about me and how I got into this stuff, because this was never part of my plan. I never intended on becoming a professional healer or teaching spirituality or doing anything like that, because really, I'm just a computer geek. And so when I was a boy and a young man, I loved the early video games. I was really into science fiction and fantasy, and I read a lot about King Arthur and Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. And so the one thing, though, that was a practical skill was computer programming. And I loved the early computers. I think I was probably the only 12-year-old that year that asked for an assembly language reference book for his birthday. So I was very deep into the computer world. And so when it came time for me to grow up and figure out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, it was a pretty easy decision, because the one thing that I was good at that somebody would pay me for was programming computers. And so I decided to go to college at MIT. And it was at MIT that I discovered the first huge passion in my life, which was the internet. And of course, that sounds kind of funny today, especially for our younger listeners. But 25 years ago, the internet was far from mainstream and was only available to select a number of research universities and defense contractors. And so at MIT, I just fell in love with the internet and the online world. And I saw how it had the potential to really change everything. And it has, even beyond what I expected. So long story short, I made computer networking the focus of my studies. I got my bachelor's degree at MIT. I continued on to graduate school there at the Laboratory for Computer Science. I joined the Telemedia Networks and Systems group and spent my years in graduate school researching new technologies to send live streams of audio and video over the internet. So that was really exciting. I qualified for the PhD program and was working towards my doctorate when the internet boom hit in 1995. And so, like a lot of the other people in my lab, I decided that I didn't want to spend the next several years rotting in graduate school when there's this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity available. So I recruited my lifelong best friend as another partner, moved to California, and started an internet company. And my plan was I would work really hard for a couple of years, make the company really successful, and then sell it for millions of dollars, and then maybe retire to a tropical island to spend my days hot tubbing with supermodels. That was my plan. And, for a 20-something young guy, that's a pretty good plan. At least I thought so. But as the joke goes, if you want to make God laugh, all you got to do is tell him your plans, because the divine has something very different in store for me. However, it got off to a great start. We had a lot of success when we started the company. The very first website I did in my entire life was the website for the launch of the Sony PlayStation in the summer of 1995. So we were, playing with the big boys. A year later, we had founded this company. We had a handful of Fortune 500 clients. We were doing websites for several divisions of Sony, a handful of video game developers. We did the website for Nissan Motors. We did the website for Disneyland. So, we were doing some very serious work. I had 15 people working for me, and we were starting to make money, and everything looked like it was going to turn out great. And that's when I started to have problems with my health, because one of the dirty little secrets of this company was the reason we were able to be successful was that I was literally working 100-hour weeks. It was 7 days a week, around the clock, early morning, all day, late night, every single day, no weekends, no vacations, no holidays. It was literally all I did for a couple of years was eat, sleep, and work. That was it. And so after a couple of years of this, my body couldn't handle the pressure. And so I started to develop a lot of pain and problems. So long story short, I developed a really devastating and very painful set of repetitive stress injuries. At first, I didn't worry too much because up to that point in my life, whenever I had a problem with my health, I just went to a doctor, and the doctor would give me something and take care of it. So, I really wasn't too concerned when it first happened. And so I went to doctors, and they gave me anti-inflammatories and sent me to physical therapy and told me to ice it and use electric stim and the usual conventional remedies, but I didn't get better. And so, long story short, I spent the next 3 years in conventional therapies trying to get better. And so I did, everything I could. I went to the best orthopedist, the best physical therapy clinic. I spent a couple of years doing 3-hour sessions, 3 days a week at the Curlin Job Clinic, where a lot of professional athletes and Olympians go. So, I was doing everything I could, but I didn't get better. I just got worse. And so we'll fast forward a couple of years to 1998. Not only did we have a successful website company, but we started a second company to make online games. And that part of the pressure of that extra workload is what really pushed me over the edge. And so by 1998, my partners were starting to lose patience with me because I had gone from being what they called a force of nature behind the keyboard, working 100-hour work weeks, typing 100 words a minute, creating an enormous volume of brand new cutting-edge software to build up these companies from nothing. A few years later, I was in so much pain that I could only work on a computer maybe 30 to 40 minutes a day. I was in so much pain I could only drive for 5 or 10 minutes at a time because it was too difficult to hold a steering wheel. Most of the time I couldn't read books because the simple action of holding a book open was too painful for me. And it's really embarrassing to admit that I had to go and move in with my parents because sometimes my pain was so severe I had to have my mother cut my food for me. So this wasn't just a little tingle in my wrist. This was really serious, life-shattering pain. And so I struggled along best I could for a number of years. And it all came to a head in 1998, and I went through my first dark night of the soul. And I'm sure, Debra, maybe you and some of the listeners will know what I'm talking about when I say that the dark night of the soul is when everything in your life just seems to fall apart all at once. Mm. So what that looked like for me was that, first of all, my doctors gave up on me. After years of therapy, I had a world-class orthopedist look me in the eye and said, Brent, there's no chance you'll ever recover. There's no chance you'll ever be out of pain, and you're never going to work again. So if I were you, I would go try to find someone that can take care of you until you die. And so I was 27 at the time when he told me that. Wow. So that was devastating. It's not just that they thought my chances were bad. They thought they were zero. They told me not to come back. They didn't want to waste their time on me because they saw me as an impossible case. They basically were sending me to hospice at 27. So that was devastating. Right around the same time, my partners also lost patience with me because I couldn't work like I used to. So I had a major falling out with my partners, and I lost the job I had. I lost my salary, and they had actually took the website company, which of course I had literally crippled myself to build and make successful. And they sold it behind my back for millions of dollars, and there were multiple lawsuits and a lot of bad feeling. So, career-wise, I was wiped out too. What I call the cherry on top of the sundae was that I also found out right about that same time that my lifelong best friend had been secretly dating the woman that I was in love with.
God.
So it was just a total disaster. And so, at first I just felt overwhelmed. I just wanted to give up. I didn't want to, I couldn't handle it anymore. But I was lucky that I had a friend of mine that turned me on to positive thinking. And he said, hey, Brent, when life just is, putting you right down the toilet, that's what you need positive thinking for. And so for a short while, I got really into positive thinking. And I went to positive thinking seminars, and I put power words on my walls. And I said my mantras 108 times a day because someone had told me if you did that, anything you said had to come true. And I, did all these crazy things. But it didn't seem to work. And so after about 6 months of that, I gave up on it. And I decided that positive thinking was just a bunch of hippie brouhaha designed to trick desperate people out of their money. Now, I was wrong. But at the time, that's how I felt, because it didn't work for me, just like it doesn't work for a lot of people. And so I then was very lucky that I didn't stay stuck too long in just being depressed and drinking all day, laying on the couch, because I had another friend of mine turn me on to alternative medicine. And when I first got involved in alternative medicine, it was pretty exciting, because I grew up in a very culturally conservative area. And so I had been trained from my parents to believe that, well, anybody that uses alternative medicine is just because they can't afford a real doctor. But now that I had had this very serious health problem, and the doctors had, literally the best doctors in the world had given up on me, I found alternative medicine really, might be exactly what I needed. And so long story short, I dove headlong into the world of alternative medicine. And I spent the next 5 years as a full-time patient trying every kind of treatment I could, get available to me. And so I did all sorts of stuff. I went to Chinese doctors, I took herbs, I got acupuncture, I went to homeopaths and osteopaths and chiropractors. I had all sorts of deep tissue work. I went to movement retrainers. I worked with physical therapists, kinesiologists. I got healing from Reiki healers and pranic healers. I mean, on and on and on. I did all these crazy diets and cleanses and fasts. I took all sorts of supplements. I owned just about every healing device and machine known to man. One of my doctors liked to joke that I could start a physical therapy clinic in my bedroom because I had a collection of cold lasers. I had electric stim. I had subsonic stimulators. I had vibration machines and chi machines and titanium type and copper compression clothing. I mean, on and on and on. And so, long story short, what happened was that over and over and over again, not just like once or twice or 10 times, but literally dozens, hundreds of times, I'd find someone and they'd have a healing technique, or they'd have a supplement, or they'd have a diet or a cleanse or something, right? I'd tell them my story, and they'd always say, oh, Brent, I'm so glad you found me, because what I have to offer you is exactly what you're going to need to get better. And they'd usually tell me about their great success stories and how 90 or 95 or 98% of the people who did their system or bought their program or used their supplement or bought their machine, they'd be out of pain, or they'd be, well and healed within a month or 6 months or whatever it was. And I'd sign up and I'd give it a shot. And I gave it a serious shot. So just so everyone's clear, when I say, for example, that I tried acupuncture, I don't mean I had 4 sessions. When I say I tried acupuncture, what I mean is I went out and found the best Chinese doctor in town. I found the guy that treated the Lakers and a lot of celebrities, figuring he would be really good. And I committed to see him twice a week for the next year and a half. So I basically spent 5 years as a full-time patient. All I did was run around from treatment to treatment. And of course, living with my parents, going into debt, putting things on the credit card, thinking that maybe this thing will be the breakthrough, right? Maybe this will be the thing that does it, that gets me better, gets me out of pain, gets me back to work so I can start my life. Well, guess what? Over and over and over time, again, not just a few times, but dozens, maybe 100 times. A year or two later, they'd say to me, sorry, Brent, I'm not sure what's going on, but this just doesn't work for you. I guess I'll have to find something else. And so this kept happening. We fast forward to 2003, and that's when I decided to have an experimental surgery, because I had had one of my doctors tell me that they thought this surgery could help me. So long story short, I had the surgery. And of course, if the surgery had cured me and I was out of pain and lived happily ever after, I wouldn't be here today on this call. Instead, the surgery was a total nightmare and made things a lot worse, because when I woke up from the surgery, I couldn't move my arm at all. It was completely frozen at the elbow. So it was stuck like that for 4 months. Long story short, tried a bunch of stuff, couldn't get it to move. That's when I got introduced to Terry O'Connell. And Terry was a really fascinating lady. She had been an old friend of the family. She'd been a close friend of my Aunt Lauren for like 20 years. They had worked together for a long time. And Terry was a very successful, super smart financial professional, Wharton School MBA, big career, made lots of money, was very good at what she did. And Terry had had a major health crisis that almost killed her. And she had found this energy healing technique and went to learn it. And not only did it save her life, but she was so impressed with it that she walked away from her career in finance to be a full-time healer. And so when I heard this, first thing I thought was, wow, this woman's really gone off the deep end of the New Age pool. But I was desperate, and I was willing to try anything. And I admit I did it mostly because I wanted to convince myself and the world and God and everyone that I had done everything I could to get better. So I had a session with Terry. And, I went to go see her. It was a, beautiful Los Angeles morning. And I went into her apartment, and she sat down across the room from me and explained to me that the power of the subconscious mind, about how everything that happens in our lives is actually created by us, but it's an unconscious process. But you can learn to harness that by learning to explore the subconscious mind. You can learn to find out what's inside of you and clear the subconscious blocks and literally recode yourself from the inside out. And so this sounded kind of interesting. And she showed me the process of muscle testing, which is the way that you identify blocks. And then she showed me how you can clear the blocks. And so we had a session, and she asked me a lot of questions about my belief in God. And we talked about my relationship with my parents and some of the things that happened to me as a little boy. And we talked about what had happened with my best friend who had betrayed me and stolen all this money from me, and the disastrous experience I had had with all the pain in my health. And we talked a little about my first marriage that didn't work out. And it was all very interesting, but I'm kind of thinking, well, it's all well and good to talk about your feelings, but that's not my problem. I figured my problem isn't my relationship with God or my parents or my best friend. My problem is I'm in pain and I can't work. And so I didn't see how that would help. And so at the end of the session, she said, okay, Brent, we're going to do a healing on you. And I said, okay, great. Give it your best shot. I've been to healers before, and, nothing had ever happened. And so she just closed her eyes and went into a trance. And about a minute later, something popped and moved inside my elbow. And it was the weirdest thing. And I remember I opened my eyes and I looked across the room from her and I said, whoa, something just happened. And she looked at me and kind of smiled and said, okay, Brent, try your arm. And I did, and I could move my arm again. It was a genuine miracle. My frozen elbow had 100% completely, instantaneously, and permanently healed. And that, of course, was the miracle that got me seriously engaged on this path. So long story short, I was like, okay, Terry, I don't know what you just did, but I got to learn this. And I spent the next few years studying and practicing energy healing with Terry and some other teachers and started my business. So that was the miracle that hooked me into this. But it actually wasn't the most important miracle. That was just the beginning of many. And so the first part of the story ends there. I went on and became a healer. But there's a lot more. And so I'll try to keep it real quick, just another minute or two, and then we'll get into the real content. But, I built my business, became a specialist in working with the subconscious and clearing blocks and traumas and doing healings on people. Had a lot of great success. I've seen over 1,000 miracles happen to date. I've seen HIV completely disappear from the body. I've seen several instant healings on asthma. I've seen broken bones heal overnight. I've seen hundreds of cases of lifelong allergies instantly and permanently vanish. I've seen decades of depression gone in an hour. I've seen people who haven't had a date in 5 years find love and get married. I've seen people who were just broke and destitute and helpless turn it around and get back on their feet and start a life and start building wealth again. I mean, on and on and on. So I saw incredible things happen. But what I found was that there was something missing. And so, long story short, a few years later, I was building up my practice, I was making money again, and I got involved in an investment scam. And at the end of it, I had lost everything and ended up bankrupt. I also was going through the worst heartbreak of my life. I just fell desperately in love with this woman who totally rejected me and basically wanted me to be her puppy dog best friend, to take care of her and drive her around and do things for her, and then be a shoulder to cry on when her latest boyfriend treated her badly. So even though I had mastered so much of the healing arts, was very successful in my own right as a healer, I was still suffering quite a bit. So I knew there was something missing. And so what I learned was, and I didn't know this right away, it took me years and years of study and practice, and spent a small fortune on healers and seminars and spiritual coaches and retreats and supplements and all this. Years and years of work. There's a couple of things I learned. One, I learned that I hadn't embodied a lot of the teachings. And so we're going to talk a little bit about embodiment to actually not just know spiritual truths, but live them. So that was important. So I had all this knowledge in my head, but I hadn't embodied it. And so there was a disconnect between the head and the heart. And I want to do a little exercise a little later in the call to give everybody a direct spiritual experience of what living in spirit is like. It completely changes everything. So that was really important. Second thing that happened was in 2012, I finally awakened. And like a lot of people, I figured, well, I'm already awakened. I know how to do energy healing. I know about intuition, and I know how to talk to guardian angels and people that are deceased, and I know how to manifest and all that. So I thought I was already awakened. But awakening is not that. It's much more profound, goes much deeper. So the greatest miracle of my life, really, more so than my frozen elbow instantly healing, more so than any of the amazing, incredible healings I've seen in my clients, perhaps even more so than my mother instantly healing from life-threatening cancer in 2010, was waking up to truth, experiencing a genuine spiritual awakening. And that was so important for me because that was the missing link. What I realized then was that not only our whole society, but the whole New Age industry, all the energy healers, all the mystics, all the spiritual teachers, maybe not all of them, but almost all of them, all of the wealth building gurus, all of that stuff is built on the great lie. It's such a foundational lie that most of us have no idea that it's there. And it creates all the suffering in our lives. And so quite simply, when I woke up and understand the truth of what it means to be human, the truth of the soul, the truth of the spirit world, the truth of what's really going on with our lives, with the great shift, the truth of God, that's when the suffering started to end. And so that's why awakening has been called the beginning of the end of suffering. And it really is just that. It's also been called the foot in the door to enlightenment. And it's that as well. And so what I realized was at the time in 2012, at that point, I had spent a couple of years developing my own energy healing system. And when I awakened, I realized that I couldn't do that anymore, that I couldn't be teaching people how to manipulate the world from ego using energy anymore. And so I took it all and threw it in the trash can, a couple of years of work. And I started from scratch. And now what I really teach is awakening. And once you've awakened, then I can teach you much more effectively how to use energy, how to clear blocks, how to manifest, how to heal. It is a great spiritual turbocharger that will make all the processes you do between 10 and 1,000 times more powerful. And so that's really the new focus. And so I still do a lot of work with the subconscious. Those are important tools. I still use them. I still teach them. But now I teach it from a different place because the ability to work with energy and create miraculous healings is great. But without awakening, you're still going to suffer. And that's what happened to me. I became a master of working with the subconscious, a master healer, one of the best in the world from what many people have said. And yet I still lost all my money and went bankrupt and was almost killed by a broken heart. So I knew something was missing. And so my guess is that a lot of the listeners today are feeling that way too. They know something is missing, that all the law of attraction programs and the energy healing. There's nothing wrong with any of that. But without awakening, it's so limited. One of my teachers, Jim Drever, put it really well when he said that most people don't want real spiritual freedom. Most people just want a bigger prison to let their ego run around in. And so that's what I'm here to do today. If you just want a bigger prison to let your ego run around in, I have a lot of material for that. I really do. And it's very powerful and very effective. It will make you money. It will find you love. It will heal your body. Absolutely. But none of that is going to give you real freedom. So the most important thing I have to offer today is that real freedom. When I first learned this, of course, I had studied this stuff for decades. I studied all the philosophies, all the major religions, including Advaita Vedanta, also known as non-duality, which is the essential teachings of awakening. And I thought I understood it all, but I didn't. And when I met one of my teachers, he made a claim to me, and he said, Brent, if you offered me $1 billion to give up my awakening and go back to how I was before, I would laugh at you and say no. And I thought it was just a sales claim, but I was intrigued. So I committed to his classes, paid him something like $8,000 to take a year and a half worth of intensive classes with him. And that was the breakthrough for me. I woke up. And when I did, I was like, oh my God, he's right. This is worth more than any amount of money. Of course, we're all in a different place. And I cannot absolutely guarantee to every listener that you'll find what I'm offering here is worth more than $1 billion. You'll have to decide that for yourself. But I have a high degree of confidence you'll find it's worth at least a couple $1 million.
Well, I actually have a question about it because your program, I find it so intriguing that it's 30 days. It's a 30-day guided process to genuine spiritual awakening. And like you just said, you went a year and a half and $8,000, and now you have a program that's 30 days. I mean, considering spiritual awakening is something that people spend a lifetime trying to gain. So can you tell us about how this can be achieved or mastered, or at least a taste of it in 30 days?
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's really simple. Genuine awakening is actually very easy. The trouble is that up until very recently, there really hasn't been a lot of material that's useful or well presented. And so if you look at some of the most well-known teachers of non-duality and awakening, what you'll find is their material is, at best, very obtuse and difficult to understand.
Yes.
Because most of it was written from people who spoke a different language and lived in a different culture in a different time. And so what I found was that there's a lot of material out there, but it didn't make any sense. And when it clicked for me, I was able to take all my experience and all my training as an engineer, as a scientist, as a teacher, and really break it down to its essentials. And I would say probably my greatest talent is the ability to take very difficult and esoteric concepts and principles and explain them in ways that everybody can understand. And so a good analogy would be when I took calculus when I was in high school, I thought calculus was really hard. And I really had to struggle with it and spend a lot of time doing my homework in order to get it. Then I came to MIT. When I took calculus at MIT, I said to myself, oh my gosh, I can't believe how easy this is. And so when something that's difficult is taught properly, it's actually very easy. And when I learned calculus at MIT from a great teacher, it was so simple. And I looked back and saw that all the struggles and all the difficulty I had had with it before were just because it wasn't taught properly. And so awakening is like that too. It's actually pretty simple. The trick is to get out of your own way and be open to different things that you never could imagine or thought possible. Because the reason the great lie, as it's called, has so much power is because almost no one knows that it's there. It's invisible to us. And so by taking all these teachings, decades of work, what I found was that everything I studied was actually pointing me to the same place. The different philosophical traditions. If you read the Bible, if you study Buddhism, if you read the Gita, if you read the Tao Te Ching, all those things are saying the same thing. But it wasn't until I woke up and got it that I was able to understand it. And so rather than take esoteric teachings that come from different times and places and different languages and cultures and been mangled by centuries of mistranslation, I started from scratch and said, okay, what is it people need to know? If we strip out all the mysticism, strip out all the agendas, strip out all the feel-good, what's the core essence of what's left? And what I found was almost everybody can wake up in about 30 days. And I created the product as a set of 30 10-minute insights and healings. Because you can't wake up all at once. At least most people can't. That's why I recommend you do it over 30 days. It's very profound. This material will completely turn your mind inside out. And so you do need some time to process and integrate it. But almost everybody wakes up by the end of 30 days. Usually it happens sometime between day 7 and day 15. That's usually where it happens. The light bulb goes on and you go, oh my gosh, my whole life has been a lie. And you feel nauseous and dizzy, and then you get over it and feel the immense freedom. Because once you discover the great lie and awaken to the truth, everything starts to change. Your fears dissolve, your worries start to disappear, life gets a lot easier. But the way I like to put it is using energy healing, clearing the subconscious, using mantras, mind power, manifestations, all that cool stuff, intuition, all of that is great. But if you're using it without awakening, it's like wading through tar. It's sticky, it's slow, it's smelly, it's difficult, and it will wear you out. Once you awaken, that turns the tar into water. And it's clean, and it's fun, and it's fast, and it's easy. So that's why I call it the spiritual turbocharger. It'll make everything you do between 10 and 1,000 times more powerful. Another part of it is beyond just the explanation. Another part of it is I took my ability to work with the subconscious, in particular, the Formula for Miracles technology I developed, which is a process of creating audios that will automatically clear subconscious blocks while you listen to it. And so what I found was a lot of people had trouble waking up because they had subconscious blocks in the way. It was really that simple. It's very similar to the same reason why a lot of people have trouble making money. You can go to 1 million mind power seminars and say 1 billion affirmations and read 1,000 books and join 100 mastermind groups. But if you're full of subconscious blocks, it's a waste of time. You're not going to get ahead. And if you do, you're going to lose it all. Same thing with awakening. If there's subconscious blocks in the way, it's going to be very challenging. Either you won't get it or you'll sabotage the process. And so part of what I offer in the program is a set of Formula for Miracles encoded block clearings that will clear the most common subconscious blocks that hold us back from awakening. And so it's almost like cheating because it works so well. But you put that together, you take a good, clear explanation and sift out all the crap and stuff you don't need, just the essence of it, match that to the block clearings that will prepare your subconscious mind for awakening, and add in the embodiment piece, which we're going to talk about and do next, where spiritual concepts and ideas become things you experience. They're not just ideas in your head, but feelings in your heart. Connecting the head to the heart, that's embodiment, presence, living in the now. You put that together, and then the magic happens. And as far as I know, no one out there has done any of those things, let alone all three.
Well, you know what? Everything you say is so exciting because as you said, there are so many books written that are so dense, like these Advaita and Masters, and they try to put it in modern language and they become bestsellers, but does it really do anything?
Right.
But what you've done is you've taken the essence and made it so that we can follow your formula and have the result that we're seeking from reading these books. And it's so exciting for all of us because obviously the people who are attracted to a telesummit like this and to teachers like you are people who want exactly what you're offering. So I just thank you for putting it together for us in such a simple way. But there's one thing that we want to know, and that is, what is the great lie?
Well, it's a little difficult to put concisely, but I'm going to do my best here. And the great lie is something that's covered at length in the program. The great lie and awakening are two sides of the same coin. And awakening is really about understanding what is this you that is you. And that's a powerful question. That is the focus of the Advaita Vedanta, also known as non-duality, is understanding what exactly is this you. That's what Eckhart Tolle discovered when he had his moment of awakening. He was sitting on the park bench, homeless and broken, pondering, what is this you? What is this awareness, this presence that was him, the essence of him? And he got it. And he popped all the way to the enlightened state. And he laid on the park bench in the state of ecstasy and joy for 6 months. Then he came out of it because he had to come back down to earth to go share it with the world. And so the power of now was a great breakthrough because his work was the first exposure of people to that principle. The trouble was, my opinion, and a lot of people was, it wasn't a very good a description. So he was a great person in terms of had an amazing talent and experience, but I didn't think it was related very well.
Well, so, I have to agree with you. I tried to read that book, and I would turn the pages, and 3 pages later realize that I hadn't read one thing because it was just
you had been looking at a lot of words, but no meaning was sinking in, right?
Right.
That's exactly the experience I had. I look at the words, and I understood all the words. Same thing with the work of Hawkins. He wrote some amazing books. He was a fully awakened human, but if you read his books, there's a lot of words, but it doesn't make sense. The essence of it does not translate. You don't get it. And so the awakening is understanding what this you is. The false lie is what you thought it was. And so the great lie is understanding that this you that you thought you were and other people were is a giant lie. And it's a little hard to go beyond that without, spending more time on it, but that's what we cover in the program. I want everyone to wake up to understand the truth. And so, as an example, once you're awakened, you can look at just about any philosophical or religious treaty by a master, and you will get it. You will understand exactly what it is they're talking about. If I say, for example, that there's nobody here, if you understand exactly what that means, 100% total clarity, then that's an indication you're starting to wake up. But my teachers told me that for years, and it didn't sink in. One of my teachers, Carl Wolf, would say to me over and over and over again, Brent, there's nobody here. There's nobody here. There's nobody here. Turn on the observer. Turn on the observer. There's nobody here, and I didn't get it. Then I woke up, and I was like, oh, I get it. And so once you start the program will awaken you. It will give you all the knowledge you need. I'll warn you, it'll turn your brain inside out along the way. Because it actually made me sick when I woke up. Because I realized, I said, oh my gosh, I'm not Brent. And everything I've ever done or tried to achieve, everything I've said, and every action I've taken in my entire life was based on this lie of who I thought I was. And that was hard to get past. But what I did, I found incredible freedom on the other side.
And that's what I was going to comment on. All of the suffering that you had gone through in your life with broken hearts, with physical ailments, with bankruptcy and businesses lost. What happens is when you realize the truth of reality, if those things happen, they don't affect you, but they stop happening because you're also in the flow of that cosmic energy, which we're born to be in the flow of.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And you are going to be leading us to that. But you also say that there are 3 stages to the spiritual journey. Can you tell us those?
Absolutely. And so one thing I found is that a lot of the spiritual teachers and healers will tell you that attachment to result creates suffering, and they're right. And they'll tell you that resistance keeps you stuck, that what you resist will persist. That's correct. However, what I found was that no matter how smart you are, no matter how many seminars you take or how many healers you work with, as long as you're living your life based on the great lie, as long as you're not fully awakened, you're going to have suffering, you're going to have attachment. That for an unawakened person, it is simply impossible to let go of attachment to result. Impossible. You can work at it for decades. You can do yoga for 40 years, meditate for 50, go to 1 million retreats. Good luck. Until you wake up to the truth, you're never going to get past it. And so the 3 stages of the spiritual journey are actually pretty simple. And they reflect the stages of human life. The first stage is the victim, where your life seems to be controlled by influences greater than you. And so it kind of makes sense. When we're infants, we're all victims, aren't we? We're pretty much powerless to control our environment. And so in the spiritual journey, you start off as a victim. Then the next stage is the victor. In the victor stage, you learn to use your mind and your body and your spiritual power to achieve your goals and get what you want. So in terms of the human life, we grow up, we become adults, we learn to use our body, we get educated, we learn to read and write, we learn skills, right? We get educated, we go out into the world, and we're able to make money and find love and take care of our health and get what we want. So that's the victor stage. In terms of metaphysical processes, the transition from victim to victor is when you discover the law of attraction and learn about energy healing. You learn how to work with the subconscious and manifest and do healings from a theta state and all that cool stuff. So that's great to take you to the victor stage. The trouble is the victor stage is not even halfway home. On the Hawkins scale, the victim is up to 200, and the victor is to 499. And the whole second half of the human spiritual journey, from 500 to 1,000, which is total enlightenment or Christ consciousness, that is what's called the vehicle stage. And so in the victor stage, you're using different tools and processes to manipulate the world to give you what you want. And there's nothing wrong with that. But without awakening, you'll be stuck there forever. It doesn't matter how much money you make, how healthy you are, how much love you have, or how many amazing spiritual experiences you have. You'll always be suffering. You will eternally be stuck at 499, wading through tar. The key insight, the magical key that opens the door to the higher levels of the spiritual journey is awakening. When you awaken and understand the truth of what this you is, that you are at your core, at the essence, what happens is you start to release attachment to result and drop your resistance. You start to be more present and live in the flow. That's why it's the beginning of the end of suffering. That's why it's the foot in the door to enlightenment. And so awakening catapults you over that 500 barrier into the vehicle stage. In the vehicle stage, there's no attachment to the need to manipulate the content of your life because you understand what you really are. And so the suffering disappears, the worry and fears disappear. And because of that, you're in less resistance and you're not attached to result. And you're able to be much more present and in the flow. And that's usually when the really incredible things happen. For me, when I first awakened, my business went into a rut, and then it exploded like I'd never seen before. That's not unusual. We're given a little challenge. It's an invitation to say, hey, Brent, do you want to retreat back and live from ego the rest of your life? Grabbing and manipulating and trying to, control and hold on to what you want? Or are you willing to let go of this and be present and trust the divine plan? Then, buckle your seatbelt because you're in for quite a ride. And so that's the great gift that awakening gives us. It opens the door to the highest levels of the spiritual journey.
Well, we would love to have a taste of that. Is it possible for you to kind of lead us in an experience of what living like that is like?
Absolutely. So what I've done before is a lot of work with the subconscious. I'm not going to do that here. There is on the program, there is a big section of clearing subconscious blocks to awakening. So, that's available. It's very important and very powerful, but on its own, it doesn't solve anything because it doesn't get to the core. What I want to do here instead is I want to take this opportunity to do a little bit of embodiment work. What that means is I want to give the listeners a chance to have a direct experience of the truth. And so a lot of us have heard about the matrix. We've heard that the world around us is an illusion and all that kind of thing. The trouble is, for most people, that just remains an idea. We can't actually see it. You can't actually feel it and live it. And so one of the incredible things I've learned along my path was what I call consciousness shifting. And so when we do consciousness shifting, what we're doing is we're entraining the brain and nervous system into a different state so that you can move beyond the illusion of the material reality around us and see the truth that lays underneath. And so it sounds a little funny, but what I'd like to do is we'll do this in maybe 2 rounds of a minute or 2. And so, Debra, I definitely want you to follow along.
Okay.
And so what we're going to do here is, with everyone's permission, if you want to join in, just say yes out loud, and you'll be entrained into the experience. And so I'm going to bring everyone to a different state where you can start to see energy and see truth, to see past the illusion around us with open eyes. And so this is all done with open eyes. A lot of people don't realize that the most advanced and most powerful meditations are almost all done with the open eyes. And so depending on your level of sensitivity and how much experience you have, some people may not see or feel much right away, and that's okay, because we want to gently open this. It's like a muscle you've never used before. If you've never worked out, you don't want to go to the gym and hit weights hard for 4 hours straight, right? It's just going to damage your body. And so same thing here. Being able to see energy, to see truth with your open eyes, to embody spiritual truth is like a muscle you may not have developed before. So some people, if you're sensitive, if you've done a lot of this work, this may be a huge breakthrough. And so it's not unusual that you may notice auras. You may see auras appear. You may notice that the world around you, the room you're in, starts to fade out. It'll fade to white if there's a lot of light. It'll fade to black if there's not. If you're looking at a picture of a person, you may actually see, or looking at a person that's nearby, you may actually see their face change. What you're seeing is their incarnations in other lifetimes. That's why I'm saying this is an exercise to let you see beyond the illusion, beyond the veil that surrounds us, to see right into the soul. Now, some people may not have an intense visual experience like that. That's okay. Remember, we want to gently unfold this ability. Most people can feel it, even if they can't see it. So most people you'll notice a greater sense of ease, a greater sense of presence, and more of a connection to the world around you, meaning you can feel your body, you can feel the chair you're sitting in. That's presence. If you're in pain, it's very likely that your pain will start to go away or will disappear completely. So we'll do it in 2 rounds. We'll do a minute or 2, and then we'll chat for a minute about what you experienced, and then we'll do a second one. Sound good?
And do you want me to say yes out loud on behalf of everyone, or just you do? Okay.
You can only say yes for you.
For me? Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone else listening, you'll need to say yes for you, because that's something that someone else can't do for you, is to give permission. All right, so if you're going to follow along, what I'd recommend everyone to do is just get comfortable. Sit down, lay down, stand, however you want, and pick something to look at. You might pick like the corner of a door frame. If you have a favorite picture on the wall, pick a spot on the picture to look at. If you're looking at a picture of an animal or a person, look at their left eye. That's the window to the soul. But you don't have to look at an animal or a person. If you're looking at your computer, if you're looking at a picture of me or Debra, that works fine. You can look in our left eye. You can look outside. Just pick something to look at. What I want everyone to do is just let your eyes relax. Don't force it, but it's okay if your vision gets a little blurry. And so we're going to start in just a second. Last thing I want to say is blinking will reset the phenomena. So don't force yourself, but try to minimize your blinking. If you blink, you'll come out of it for a second and go right back. If it gets too scary, if this pushes you too hard, too fast, and there's too much going on, just start blinking your eyes really quickly, and that'll bring you right back to normal. All right, you ready, Debra?
Yes.
All right, let's do it. All right, well, I'll bring it back to normal, whatever that is. So, Debra, what did you experience?
I have to say that the truth is, I did see light. I usually don't. I was looking at a picture of someone on my computer screen, and I was looking at their left eye, and I thought, is this really happening? Because I saw as if like a sun ray expanding from that eye outward.
Good. Pretty cool, huh? That's truth. The physical body, that's the illusion. The truth is we're all beings of light. And we've heard that before, but most of us haven't embodied that. In other words, we haven't directly experienced it. We've just heard it. It's knowledge in our head, right?
Yeah.
But when you look at someone and see the light coming off of them with your open eyes, it's like, wow, that's more real than the body. Pretty amazing, huh? And so the aura, that's all it is. And so one of the first things that may happen to some people is you'll see an aura. You'll see a white light either coming out of their eye or around their head.
Yeah.
That's the truth. That's what's really there. And so that's why I say this is, for some people, it's the first experience of poking through the matrix to see truth. That's why all the spiritual teachers tell us that everything you need for enlightenment is right here, right now, inside of you. You don't need to change anything on the outside. All you need to do is learn how to look at the world differently to see through the lie. And what's left is the truth. So that's what I meant by embodiment, to directly experience these spiritual things you've been taught and heard before.
Okay, we want to experience more of this.
Cool.
That was a good taste.
Yeah, so there's an entire training video in the package, the consciousness shifting training, that's a very intense experience that's designed to be used with the program. But I won't make everyone download it. We'll do another few minutes right now.
Okay.
So if this was too intense, remember, you can just say no to make it stop at any point. That cuts the permission and connection, and you'll go back to normal. You can also just rapidly blink your eyes. That'll make all the funny visual stuff go away and come back to normal. for anyone that's game to try it, I'm going to take us a little deeper for round 2. You game, Debra?
Yes.
All right, let's do it. So pick something to focus on. Just relax. Let your eyes relax. Let your vision get blurry, but don't force it. And here we go. All right, we'll come back to normal, whatever that is. Another experience that's very common is you'll see things moving, even though you know they're not. So you'll see motion, almost like a mirage in the desert, because that's what the reality around us is. It's a huge mirage. So you'll see movement, even though you know things aren't moving, and you may see things like pop in and out of existence, like something may just completely disappear and then come back. Well, that's true. The truth is it's not actually there. So when it disappears, you're just seeing a deeper layer of truth. What did you experience round 2?
Okay, this is even more amazing. So I thought, okay, I was cheating last time because the person on my screen on my screensaver happens to be a great spiritual master. So I thought, okay, of course I saw light around him because he's a great spiritual master. So I looked up on the wall and I was looking at a photograph of Paul McCartney, who's a nice guy, but not a great spiritual master. And I swear to you, because he's looking not at me, but like off in the distance in a different direction. And while I was looking, he turned, I swear, and looked at me, and I actually saw like his soul. Yeah. I saw who he was, and not just this picture of him when he was maybe 20 years old. It was like layers. It wasn't just third dimensional reality. It was layers of who he was. Yep.
That's the truth. That's seeing what's really there. All this other stuff, that's the illusion. It has its own relative reality, but that's not truth. So congratulations, you were able to peek behind the veil a little bit and see what's actually there. Kind of cool, huh?
Yeah, and my physiology felt differently while I was doing it. In my physiology, I felt warmth, and I felt peace, and I felt actually, I have to tell you, Brent, this is the truth, a pain that I had on my shoulder went away. Is that common?
Yes, it's not uncommon at all. That's actually, the pain relieving effects of this are amazing. I learned this originally from Carl Wolf, who was one of my master teachers, who's now retired. And one of the things he used to do, but only for his inner circle of his most serious students, because it took a big toll, was when he ever had a woman that was in labor, he'd go and sit and perform this technique on them, and all their pain would vanish.
Wow.
And he'd sit with them for 8, 12, 20 hours in the hospital, whatever it took. And he'd have to get up to use the restroom, and then they start screaming in pain, and he'd come back and dissolve it. So one of the uses, and this is just one, is to dissolve pain. You can dissolve physical pain. You can dissolve mental, emotional pain, grief, anxiety, depression, because that's all an illusion too. You train your brain and nervous system to see and experience truth, to embody spiritual truth. And then the pain just disappears. Pretty wild, huh?
Pretty amazing.
Depending on the root cause, it may or may not come back.
I'll let you know what happens.
Hard to say. For some people, there's still some subconscious issues to work through. So if it comes back, usually what that means is you were shown that you're going in the right direction, but there's some subconscious stuff to clear before it can be hold permanently. But sometimes if there's not subconscious stuff in the way, it'll just heal and be gone forever.
Fabulous.
And you go, wow, that was easy.
I was thinking, could you tell us some of the other amazing turnarounds that you've seen in people's lives who have applied what you teach?
Sure, absolutely. I'd say it hits all the big three: the health, money, and love. And what's very common is a lot of us, when you have an urgent problem, maybe you're deep in debt and don't have a job, maybe you have serious illness or injury, and you're in a lot of pain, or you think you might even die, you're coming off a rough divorce or in a bad living situation. A lot of the time we think, well, the spiritual stuff is great, but what I really need is money, or what I really need is health, or what I really need is a better relationship, or my child to come home, or whatever it is. And these are real serious problems. But I encourage everyone to be willing to look past that. That maybe the reason you created this problem was to find a spiritual solution. And so what happens to many of us, and this happened to me, was we get to a certain place in the victor state. And we've been able to make our lives work to some level. And then it just falls apart. And the things we used to do to make money don't work anymore. The things we used to do to heal our body don't work anymore. The things we used to do in relationships with our family don't work anymore. And that's an invitation to the vehicle state. Because you can stay stuck as the victor, being powerful and suffering as long as you like. But if you're willing to see this as, well, maybe the real problem here isn't just money. Maybe the real problem here isn't just health or love. Maybe the real problem here is a spiritual thing. And maybe if you can get that right, the rest of it will dissolve and disappear. So absolutely. What you'll find is that many people, once they awaken, part of what will typically happen is some of the things they thought they wanted don't seem important anymore. So, for example, most of my life, I always thought that I wanted to live in a big, giant mansion and have a huge garage with like 7 fancy sports cars in it. Once I awakened, I go, that might be fun, but it's not that important. And what happens is you start to realize what it is you really want and separate that from the ego's desires that have been conditioned by the media and your parents and your friends and family. So most of the things we think we want aren't actually what we want. It's just brainwashing to make us think we want it. And so it's not unusual you'll see a huge breakthrough after awakening. I had one of my students who was one of the beta testers for this. And he said that, basically the year before he got his hands on this was the worst year of his life. Everything went wrong. He had a serious injury. He couldn't compete in sports anymore, which he loved. He worked with his hands for a living, so he couldn't work. His marriage had dissolved. He was having trouble with his kids. It was just a freaking mess. And what he realized was afterwards was that, like I just said, the old solutions weren't working. The old solution of push harder, work harder, be smarter, try harder wasn't working. And then he went through the program and woke up, and he realized that, wow, he only had one problem. The problem was the great lie. The problem was he wasn't awake. And all the rest of the stuff, the solutions started to manifest. Not all at once. All of his problems were not solved overnight. But what awakening does is it triggers an avalanche of insights. And little by little, he got everything he needed to overcome all those problems and is now having the best year of his life. He's dating 2 or 3 women, and he likes all of them. And his biggest problem right now is which one he wants to have a serious relationship with.
It's a good problem.
He has another problem where his business is starting to expand. And, he goes, wow, I've never had to hire people before and, this and that. So, he's having good problems now. And he realized that a lot of the health stuff too was just emotional and stress. And once he awakened, he started to put down the burden of stress. Because when you're fully awakened, stress cannot exist in your reality. Stress is a creation of the false I, the great lie. And once he started to put down that burden, which he didn't know he was carrying, and that's the trick, it's invisible. You don't realize this burden you're carrying until you put it down. It would be like your whole life you were wearing a 20-pound weighted belt. And you wondered why you couldn't run fast and you were tired all the time. And then one day someone says, well, take off the weighted belt, and you put it down and you feel so light. You're just going to float up in the air. Because it's a huge burden you didn't know you were carrying. That's what the lie does to you. Awakening is your invitation to put it down. And so he, like me, like a lot of people, we thought that our money problems would be solved by money. Well, what you'll find is if you're open to a spiritual solution, you may find that the reason you had the money problem was to force you to find awakening. That was the case for me. That's why I had to lose all my money and go bankrupt. Because if I had continued to amass wealth based on a lie, it would have created more and more suffering. And the only way I was going to get out of that was to lose it all and have a huge crisis. And my goal with this material is to get it out to as many people as quickly as I can, so you don't have to go through the same level of crisis and life devastation that I did to find the answers.
Well, with that having been said, you could just click on the special offer button that's on your web page. So, Brent, why don't you go ahead and tell everyone what they'll find there?
Sure. So the centerpiece of the package, the thing you'll be most interested in, is the 30 Days to Awakening program. And so that is a combination of audios and articles. So you get all the material in written form as well as a recorded audio. It is designed as 30 10-minute lessons in healings. So 10 minutes a day for 30 days, you get your brain turned inside out to awaken you to greater spiritual truth. That's also paired with 5 sets of subconscious clearing programs using my patent pending Formula for Miracles technology. So you go through them. Each one is about 20, 25 minutes, and that will clear and repattern the subconscious mind to clear the way for your awakening. Really important. It works so well, it's almost like cheating. So that's the 30 Days to Awakening. In addition to that, you'll also get, as part of the package, you'll get the consciousness shifting training. And so this will help you to embody that awakening, to actually experience these spiritual things you've been told and learned. And so the consciousness shifting video I did with another healer, Daniel Matreau, because as far as I could tell, at the time I created this, I knew of 5 people in the world who know how to do this. And one of them is now retired, one of them is crazy, and one of them is a little too dysfunctional. So you got the other 2. We got together and created this video. And to learn to do this took me about 5 years of intensive work with a master. And I probably spent at least $100,000. But it's really important to embody that awakening. So the consciousness shifting training is there for you to use as much as or as little as you want. And it's essentially what we did earlier, to take you into the matrix, to show you what's really happening so you can see energy and truth with your open eyes. So that's included in there. You'll also get the Mastering Attention series, as well as the Dissolving Pain series. Each of those is one of my VIP Club special events. And so those are really, really great resources. My VIP Club is my online members program for people who are serious about getting access to the most powerful tools of consciousness technology to transform their lives and make a difference in the world. And so every month I do a special event where I go out and do a ton of research on a particular topic or problem in order to give my members the best of the best, the cliff notes as to what you absolutely must need to know and the tools and techniques you need for that problem and that topic. And so the Dissolving Pain and Mastering Attention came from VIP Club events where they will show you how to retrain your brain and nervous system to have a different relationship with the world around you. And this is the key to dissolving stress. It's the key to dissolving pain. And these techniques, when I first learned them, I was plagued by migraine headaches that resisted all the other healing I knew. And I learned this technique, and they were gone in 20 minutes and never came back. And that was just a total life changer. So you'll get both of those series, 7 PDFs, 7 MP4 videos, plus MP3 audio meditation. Those are included in the package. In addition to that, there's a bunch of bonus items. If you've gotten packages from me before, you might have some of these, but I threw them in as bonuses just because I want to make sure everybody has access to some of my older work, because it is really important. They're great tools. So it's my book, Where Science Meets Spirit, The Formula for Miracles. You'll get the audio book. You'll get my books, Spiritual Weight Loss. You'll get my Secrets of Muscle Testing video. You'll get the Deep Theta Meditation CD. You'll get my trauma clearing audio, which is really important because the block clearings that don't go the first time, you use the trauma clearing, and that's your second line of defense. So that's really important to make sure you get all your blocks cleared. You'll also get, if anyone is interested in doing a live training with me, I have now developed my own training series called the Where Science Meets Spirit seminar series, where I'm going to teach you the best of the best, the most important techniques and insights of everything I've learned. So you'll get a half-price coupon if you want to come to the Level 1 live training class, which is a weekend class, available either live in Los Angeles or via streaming video online. So you don't have to travel. If you can't travel, you can join us remotely through the internet. You'll also get a coupon to my VIP club, which I would encourage you to check out, because I recognize that no matter how hard I work and no matter how much stuff I put in these packages, no amount of pre-recorded material could answer all your questions or handle every problem everyone will have. And so I created the VIP club in order to give everybody that's interested live access to me on a regular basis. So I do a series of group healing calls every month. I do wealth club calls, love club calls, health club calls to clear blocks, to give people healings. I do radiation clearings. I create special events every month based on feedback from my members of what their problems are. I do tons of research. And basically, I'm out doing a lot of research and spending a lot of money on a lot of things, so you don't have to. So that is included. I would encourage everyone to check it out. Over the long run, the VIP Club is potentially the most important piece in this whole package, because that's your live access to a steady stream of healing, as well as getting all your questions answered. We also include a handful of recorded calls so everyone can check it out. But the most important things in the package is the centerpiece, 30 Days to Awakening. It's actually 33. You'll get 3 bonus days on top of the 30 that's in there for those that want to take it a little further. Plus, you get the consciousness shifting video training, which you can use as much as you want. You could get the Mastering Attention series as well as Dissolving Pain. And so, as I mentioned earlier, when I learned this stuff, my teacher told me that he thought it was worth more than $1 billion. So fortunately, we're only going to charge $500 million for the package today. So call your bank, authorize a $500 million transfer, and you're all set. No, just kidding. I really want the world to have this, and I don't want everyone listening to have to go through what I had to go through, the years of pain and struggle, and probably the incredible amount of money, a small fortune I spent to learn this. So I packaged it all together, and even at the full price, which would be about $1,200, I think it's still a steal. The best value on the planet, honestly. So if you guys don't mind paying the full price, hop on over to my website. If you'd like to get the discount, if you want to get the 92% off and the 100% money back guarantee, you're welcome to take advantage of the special offer Debra and I are making. And that's okay too. Take your pick.
Really? This is one of the most powerful packages I have seen, and I've seen a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure you have.
Yes, I have. And really, if it were just the 30 days to spiritual awakening, I would hop on it in a nanosecond, and all of these other additional MP4s and MP3s and PDFs, and for everything from difficulty sleeping to weight loss to, secrets of muscle testing, which I've actually used your secrets of muscle testing MP4, and it was the first time I ever understood how to muscle test, and now it actually works for me. And that's after
Amazing, huh?
years of trying to do it. That alone, everybody, is worth the price of admission. This is just fantastic. Thank you so much for putting this together for our listeners. This is just off the charts, and I really, really mean that from my heart. Thank you so much. And I want to ask you one more question before I let you say the final word. What have you seen in the years that you've been, because you are really a healer. I don't know if that's how you refer to yourself in the big picture, but all of these years that you've been facilitating people's healings and now having developed this new body of knowledge, which is so powerful. We have all experienced it during this call. What do you see are the biggest benefits that people experience in the short term, and what do you feel are the biggest benefits that people experience over time? I guess awakening is the biggest, but How about right away?
The biggest benefits, I think, will be a decrease in stress and fear and worry.
Okay.
That's when you start to wake up, when that avalanche of insights gets rolling, that's usually the first thing you'll notice, that your problems don't seem as big or impossible as they used to, and you're less concerned, which allows you more access to the present, because all your power's in the present, but we've been tricked out of it. And so we're heavily conditioned to live in the past and the future in our heads. But that disconnects us from the present moment, which is the only place you can solve your problems. Right?
Yeah.
You can't solve your problems in the past because it's done. You can't solve your problems in the future because it hasn't happened yet.
Right.
So that would be the most immediate thing. On top of that, if you're a curious type, if you love understanding things, the analytical piece alone will blow you away. I used to, and I intend no disrespect here, I'm a big fan of a lot of Buddhist practices, but I'm now bored out of my mind at Buddhist study groups because I get it, right? It's like, it just seems like kindergarten to me. And again, I intend no disrespect. There's a lot of value there. I went to them for a long time.
Yeah.
So you'll really understand things very clearly. You'll get it. When I say there's nobody here, you'll understand exactly what I mean. When I say that this one great light creates all the suffering in your life, you'll see that. When I say that you can release attachment to result when you understand the truth of you, it will be crystal clear and obvious. So I think you'll enjoy the process of the learning and the understanding, as well as learning to see energy with the consciousness shifting is pretty freaking cool too. But it's not going to turn on for everybody right away. It took me 4 months of practice, paying my master $450 an hour before I started to get it. But, I was kind of a tough case. I'm hoping that most or all of your listeners will be able to get it from the video in a shorter amount of time without having to go through all that.
Very good.
I mean, over the long run, really, awakening is the foot in the door to enlightenment. It's really that simple. Total spiritual freedom. Do you think Jesus was worried about making his rent? Of course not. Do you think Buddha was worried about, his back pain or, finding a girlfriend? Of course not. And so this is, the most direct path to the top of the mountain. So you name it. And when you release your attachment, all things are possible. When you live in the present and the flow without resistance, you can achieve anything.
Well, it's a great promise, and I think that it's a promise that can be delivered through what you're offering us. So click on the special offer button that's on the web page if you logged on through the web. So Brent, this has been beyond fantastic. Are there any final words that you'd like to share with us before we say goodbye?
There's the most important thing I've learned along the way is that in order to move forward, you have to let go of what you think you know. And so one of my sayings is that we all live in prisons constructed out of what we think we know. So if you want to be right about what you think you know, then this is not right for you. If you want to be challenged, if you want to have your most fundamental assumptions of things that not only did you think they were true, you never even bothered to think it might not be true because you had no context for it. That's what I mean by turning your mind inside out. So if you're ready to be challenged on the most fundamental things you thought you knew about life, about truth, about God, about awareness, about spirituality, if you're ready to move out of the victor state and live as a vehicle in presence and grace, rather than fighting and struggling and manipulating and competing, then this is right. Because ultimately you have a choice. You can either be right about what you think you know, or you can surrender that and allow something much grander, much more beautiful, much more amazing to take its place. So that's my invitation to everybody.
Wow. And I sincerely hope that all of our listeners accept your invitation. So all I could say is thank you so much for sharing with us today, Brent. It's been beyond phenomenal. And I'd also like to say to everyone, thank you so much for spending this time with me and with Brent Phillips. And I look forward to when we're all together again. This is Debra Poneman. Have a wonderful rest of your day.